what's happening, everyone? Pragmatic Addict here. Yes, so I did not see Oppenheimer today. I did not see Barbie movie. The doll's just gonna have to wait. But a directorial debut horror film produced by Seth Rogen. Had to see this one. Just couldn't wait on it. So I didn't know too much about this one going into it. I had read the premise, which was pretty vague. So the premise read that a kid was hearing noises inside of his walls from his bedroom, and when he would bring it up to his parents, they would just dismiss it as this kid's imagination, only for there to be some suspicion rising that the parents may actually be hiding a dark secret. And I love that. Again, that felt very vague. It felt mysterious. Not too much about it, just a nice kind of eerie premise that could go really a number of ways. So I was excited about this film, again, with this being a directorial debut, with it being, produced by Seth Rogen. I thought it had a number of interesting things going for it. So the first thing I'll say is that this film does open up with a pretty cheesy, spooky way. It opens up with it saying 1 week before Halloween. And from the get-go, everything from its score to its tone to even the layout and the cinematic pieces, like the camera use and everything, they're very tricky in that early to late 2000s throwback Halloween fashion. It even starts off with that classic, kind of cliche, like horror fashion where it's nighttime and we're seeing the kid alone in his room, and he's hearing these noises coming from like the wall, these various noises. You can't quite make out what they are. And he goes into his mom's room. She comes into the room, investigates. She's like, oh, it's an old house. There's bound to be bumps in the night. It's probably just your imagination. Just go to sleep. Just dismisses it again, like the plot says. And everything felt like it wanted to be like a love letter to like early 2000s to late 2000s horror. It felt like it wanted to deliver in that cult following way. And I'll admit, the idea of that with everything behind this film, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg producing it being a directorial debut, with having a pretty vague and interesting premise for what it was selling. The idea of that sounds fun and interesting, in that throwback way. But everything that I was seeing from the movie up to this point was just landing in a way where it felt like it was trying way too hard to be that. And it was honestly distracting because it took away from what I was expecting, which was this fresh indie directorial debut, this idea maybe from the director that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg were like, hey, this is either just wacky and weird enough or scary enough that us as comedians want to, attach our names to this independent horror film. I was honestly just underwhelmed and felt kind of misled. And honestly, without spoiling, as the movie goes on just a little bit more and you start hearing these noises a little bit more, based on cliche setting earlier on from like the parents' side and just like filler revolving around the son's personal life, you could either have theories possibly to what may actually be going on, like what may be behind the wall, what the secret reveal may end up being, or you just may not care really about this mystery or may not feel that anticipation, because based on what you've seen up to this point, however way you look at it, again, it's just kind of underwhelming. Also, talking about this filler and setup, what I'll say is that there is a variety of it where it does feel like potentially they're just all pieces to unraveling this mystery, but they never really feel like they actually connect to each other. They just feel like a variety of, again, like cliche or just throwback horror tropes that wanted to add more lore or more story or more mystery, but just ended up being, again, you guessed it, just underwhelming. But a thing I will say that actually did catch me by surprise was this kid's story arc in this movie. Just for what we had been given up to this point in the movie, it is quite a shift that does, for what it is, raise a fair amount of questions. But immediately getting past this, we're not only thrown back into more like cliches or more room to bring some possible theories into like closer into light, but it also again tries to make the story more expansive. You feel that they're trying to do that throughout this movie with a lot of things, but again, a lot of these things just don't feel like they connect. They're not interesting, and it really does just break the movie that much more. And just how they tell the story, you know, with the characters and their routes and the character arcs, and especially the cliche underacting of the parents. It just felt like it wanted to be like a segment out of Trick or Treat or something, but had none of the actual fear factor or interesting quality or the proper like engaging storytelling. It just felt like a sloppy wannabe. There is also a point obviously where you find out what the noises in the walls may be, but you find out surprisingly so early that it honestly just feels like more of a plot point than anything. It feels like a doorway to the next act, or I feel it could have worked better if there was actual build-up and story leading to it. But the execution was just not there. But I will say this though, like how I said, how it feels like more than anything a leeway to the next act. Well, the last act is a lot of just like why or what's really going on kind of deal. It has a lot of questions that everything has kind of led up to you wondering, okay, well, so what is the overall conclusion? There is still some questions and there is more story to tell. But I'd also say this, it is one of those things that by the end, you may see what the film was trying, but again, it just feels sloppy, like a wannabe. It feels underwhelming, but as the film goes on, and honestly just here on out, certain plot points are expanded on, which does feel nice in like a change of pace sort of way. And even just the film's final act, I do think is pretty good. It's gritty, it's interesting, it's fun, it's even pretty damn wacky. And it does actually lead to a pretty fun edge of your seat ride with the writing and suspense. It's still a bit sloppy at times, and it does feel a little bit drawn out regardless of the film only being like 90 minutes, if that. And I think that this is probably just because this whole entire act does go on for like the last half of the film, or it doesn't even feel like a last act. It just feels like the first half of the film just didn't really do anything, and it led to a second half of the film that just had me wishing, why couldn't the first half lead up to and feel just as fun as this was? I do wish the rest of the film was as fun as this last act. And I'm going to give Cobweb a mixed review. So yes, guys, that is going to be my mixed thoughts on Cobweb. Let me know what you guys thought about this film for those that did see it. Again, this did come out the same weekend as fucking Barbie and Oppenheimer. So I don't know how much buzz this is getting or how many people are actually going to check this one out. But for this being the horror film releasing this week, and with it, again, having some pretty interesting qualities behind it. Again, let me know what you guys thought about it as well as my review down below. But yes, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are all having a great weekend, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.